Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our desk notes conversation today, Thursday, 11th of November, 2021. We're gonna talk about learning through inconvenience today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ambroise, working for Steelcase Learning in Asia Pacific, heading a team around the region to focus on learning with education institutions. We are helping those institutions and educators and students to learn better thanks to the learning spaces. What is Desk Notes? Desk Notes is our conversation platform at Steelcase. During those desk notes, we share with experts our thinking about working, learning, and making. A special welcome to our guest panelists. I will introduce them shortly. We're gonna go for some housekeeping first, because today I'm very happy and excited to gather more than 250 participants to this webinar with 18 different nationalities. I know some of you have woke up very early in this morning from Europe to attend, and some other are going late in the evening to listen to this fantastic panel. So let me introduce to our great illustrator, talented Ben from Australia, who will visually recording our conversation. You will have as well 2 chat box moderator to intake your questions, your comments, or some of the links you would like to share with the others to make this topic conversation even more interesting. So let me now introduce our experts today. 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago, on the 12th November 2020, we had the same panel discussion, the same panel during our latest desk notes, talking about the future of education design. Tezuka-san, Fiona Young, Michelle Cohen, and Peter Brown share their insights during these desk notes last year, and we learn from them. We learn from their sharing, and that's why today is about learning through inconvenience. We will hear more on what inconvenience means to them and what they have learned through this challenge of inconvenience. By inconvenience, we may think about negative words. We may think about isolation, disruption, something uncomfortable, some pressure, separation, illness. A lot of words can come to our minds. And I take this opportunity to introduce our first panelist, Tezuka-san. Tezuka-san is the owner and founder with his wife of Tezuka Architects for more than 25 years, after he spent a few years in London. It's interesting because Tezuka-san raised this topic of inconvenience during our last desk notes 1 year ago. He said that buildings cannot always be kind to the students. And an appropriate level of inconvenience in the built environment can challenge kids to learn and overcome. Let me introduce now the second panelist, Michelle Cohen. She set up Walters and Cohen Architects more than 25 years ago as well. After studying in South Africa and born in South Africa as well. Our third panelist is Dr. Fiona Young, PhD of Architecture at University of Melbourne, School of Design. She's been focusing on education for more than 15 years after started in Dublin. She's now the director of Sydney office at Hable, one of the leading architecture in education in Australia. Last but not least, we have Peter Brown, again, more than 25 years in this education architecture industry. He started with Perkins and Will in the US, managed to work on different projects in Asia, and now Peter has moved to Shanghai to head the education segment at DLR Group, one of as well a leading architecture firm in the US. So please welcome our panelists. Before we're gonna go to the panel discussion, let's go to a 1-minute video to really go to the topic of inconvenience. So let's play the video now. Saving up inconvenience helps to think differently and create new habits.
It's been horrid, but there have been some wonderful things that have happened. I go and visit the wild areas, spend time outdoors. So what's really good is out of an inconvenience has come a wonderful convenience.
It's really our state of mind as to how we're going to address this inconvenience.
As we've been living in the inconvenience of the pandemic times, though, we're learning how to see things in ways we never had seen them before.
The crisis gave us some insight. Now we got a chance to think about them. Life shines more amongst lives. Life shines more in convenient time. Thank you.
So thank you for listening to this short video where everybody on the panel discussion has expressed what are some lights behind inconvenience. And let me start now with a question about more personal about inconvenience. How your daily structure is changing with all the inconvenience we have been through the past couple of years. As Tezuka-san, you really initiated this topic of inconvenience last year. May we start with you, Tezuka-san?
Okay, last 2 years. Until then, I used to make two international flights every month, and making a lot of carbon dioxide. And since this crisis happened, first thing happened is breakfast. Every morning, I make breakfast for the kids and the lunch boxes, and you can have more. You can have more time with them. And then, of course, it's inconvenient because for example, I can't see my elder brother, and he's disabled, so he can't make Zoom. So now we can see him. It's a very sad thing. And maybe my mother is getting much more paralyzed. So there are two sides. But the one thing, and I realized our life has been wonderful, no? And just we didn't know our life was so good, and we can spend more time in your house. I could see how I never thought the green in your house was so beautiful until this crisis happened. And then I can see difficult things going on in Japan, especially after tsunami. And if this crisis didn't happen, we never thought about these kind of things. So I would say this inconvenience brought us a lot of opportunity, to see reality and the good thing, bad thing, both. I think it's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tezuka-san. And again, you talk about opportunities and through inconvenience on your personal life, spending more time with your family. How about you, Michal, from London, about your daily structure changing?
It is just amazing listening to Tezuka-san there, because actually I share so many stories and I'm sitting across the world. I also have found a kind of routine, but my routine, because I have a grown-up child, is not quite the same. I make sure I get up every single morning and I exercise. And then interestingly, I make lunch to take to the office. So, once again, it's this ritual of food and for me, exercise. I miss my sister enormously in South Africa and visited her because we were working in South Africa on a reasonably regular basis. But what I've done is I've taken the convenience of the new technology that we've all found, the fact that we can connect so easily digitally across the world, and I meet with her twice a week and we do weights together. So, that's been the most kind of wonderful thing to do, and something I now won't stop doing. I look forward to that. I've spent a lot of time actually also noticing things around my little patch in London, because that's where I've been based. The wild parts, as I said in the video, but going to the outdoor markets and speaking to people who make things and produce things. And I'm getting enormous amounts of pleasure from a very kind of developing probably more personal relationships in that respect. However, at the same time, I think from a work perspective, it's all become really quite frenetic and really quite hard. And I'm, I don't know about anyone else, but I found that I haven't taken enough holidays. Because in my head, holidays are going to somewhere warm and warming my bones and seeing family and friends outside of this country. So that's been a bit of a problem. And I'm struggling to balance the kind of frenetic work life with what I do on the weekends, which is just, okay, do as little as possible because I'm tired and I go outside and I enjoy London. So it is really interesting. And it's been, I'm still finding a balance in all of this. But there's some things that have been really quite joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michal. And talking about the balance, and seems like you take more time on a personal, but still missing, of course, this holiday when you fly out of your country. So how about you, Fiona, when, again, how inconvenience is impacting you in your personal life or professional life?
It's funny, actually, because the exercise has come into my life as a result of the pandemic and our new passions as well. And in many ways, after having my child, my whole life changed, as it does. And the balance of, or the imbalance of work and research and raising a child just made me not have the time to exercise. And so for me, it was an inconvenience, or that was my excuse. And so in a sense, the inconvenience of the pandemic, in which you don't have to drive your child back and forth to school or go into the office, and there's a bit more space around, has in fact opened up the convenience of being able to exercise. So I'm out there too doing weights with my personal trainer and boxing classes, and I'm really loving it.
And anything about as well, but you said balance, professional on personal, anything regarding professional as well, on a professional perspective?
Well, I think from a professional perspective, something really nice as a result of the inconvenience of not being able to come into the office and connect with each other is how our national practice, where we have 3 different studios, has become even more connected, because we're constantly in these meetings, which can be a good and a bad thing, but it's actually connected people much more on a one-to-one level. So instead of from boardroom to boardroom where you barely see a face, you're actually seeing people and speaking to them directly much more.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fiona, for that. And you're right. I mean, there is always this inconvenience of not to connect with each other. But again, I'm glad like now we can connect after, again, 1 year with the same people. That's being like said by Michelle. Technology has definitely enabled some, you can still have some personal relationship through technology. That's glad to hear, glad to see. How about you, Peter? What are the new things you are doing from your habits, routine, rituals through this inconvenience? Peter, things like maybe
I got it.
Yes.
It seems like I'm here. It seems like these terms are switching around. What was convenient is now inconvenient, and vice versa. Like some of the others, I formerly was traveling a lot, about 500,000 miles per year. And that was really convenient. I could go anytime to see who I needed to do business. But now this is the longest, the last year that I've been in one place in one time zone in about 25 years. And so it's really shifting the way that I'm seeing time and the way that I'm using time. And like some of the others, I wake up, I get up about 5 every morning. And so I have a good 4 hours before work. And so it's time to think, time to be calm. And then, a good solid day at work, and then dinner, and usually yoga practice in the evening. And so a routine, when really I've never had a solid routine in 25 years. And so that's quite different for me. So it's given me time to think and time to reinvent. I was talking to a good friend, Joe Strumska, down in Shenzhen yesterday, and we were talking about, we've gained a lot of new information in the last year or year and a half, and we're still evaluating or understanding the insights from that. And so I think we're all doing a lot of thinking about the insights we're getting from these new conditions.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Peter, for that. And again, you mentioned as well traveling, like Tezuka-san talking about traveling like hell before, between countries to other countries, or cities to other cities. Seems like now you manage to be more calm, to think differently, to think better. Back to Tezuka-san on this. Again, you initiated this topic actually, and thank you again.
Okay.
About inconvenience. But again, why you put this inconvenience word at the last year when we talk about the future of design in learning? Why you put this inconvenience topic on the table? We're just curious to share with the other participant and on this panel.
Okay, the topic, the benefit of inconvenience was given by the principal of Fuji Kindergarten. Always he talking about inconvenience. He's saying inconvenience is good because Tezuka architect makes architecture imprecise way. So there are some wind coming in and it doesn't close well, and then he complains. But he said it's good because children learn how to use these architecture carefully. These days, architecture is too well done. For example, if you don't close the door of the car properly, the door closed properly, okay? So they don't need to think about. And then when you want to switch the lights on, then you can use the remote controller. You don't need to walk to the wall, okay? So you don't need to talk to other people, and then you go do it. You're not, no? You know, these kind of things are not working in Fuji kindergarten. Everything is inconvenient. He said, inconvenience is the best part of Fuji kindergarten. That is how it started.
Very interesting. Like, inconvenience is the best part. And was everybody agree on that when you set up this inconvenience in your Fuji kindergarten? Tezuka-san, was everybody agree about inconvenience was the best things? How people react?
I think nobody agrees. I think just I think you unmute. Maybe you need to unmute to answer.
No, it's okay. It's okay now.
It's not my question, right? Is there anybody who wants to answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's just curious about if everybody agreed about inconvenience is the best things happen for the kids. You said that, but you said not everybody was agreed. Not everybody agreed with you, right?
Yeah. Is there anybody who doesn't agree?
That's why we are on this call now. And
please, somebody raise a question. They give me an answer.
How about you, Michelle or Peter or Fiona?
I think once again, it comes back to this thing about balance. And every single child is very individual. And what an inconvenience for one child may be very well be an opportunity for another child. And I'm talking specifically about a kindergarten situation. But I think that happens in our work life as well, doesn't it? And as long as we're not judging everyone that they should all be able to deal with the inconvenience in the same way or not, I think this is fine. You know, we just need to be, I suppose we need to become more flexible in the way we view the outcome of whether people can deal with an inconvenience.
Well, we need to be more flexible. What you say, Michelle, about the way we understand inconvenience, and maybe the past couple of years has been reflect exactly what you said. So the pandemic can be seen as a huge inconvenience for many. I can see on the chat some of personal, of course, comments and sharing on experience on the chat, like really a huge inconvenience for many. So let's go to the second question. So we talk about something more personal, moving as well, like with Fuji Kindergarten from Tezuka Architects, going to more practical. And how do you think about the opportunities that have been created by inconvenience in your practice? Maybe Fiona would like to answer this question about, again, in your practice, what are the opportunities that has been created thanks to the inconvenience?
Okay. Well, interestingly, and I think this is a pattern that's happening in other parts of the world, like the US and I understand the UK as well, there has been a growth in enrollments in private schools as a result of the inconvenience of the pandemic for parents, particularly, who, and I think many of the parents have, and I don't know if this is they're rightly or wrongly, but they have questioned public education or what the responses to their pandemic experience of learning, and have therefore chosen to move to private schools. And I understand here in New South Wales, I've spoken to somebody about this who works in the private school sector, who's noted that as a result, many schools have brought their master plans back forward a few years in order to address this increasing enrolment. So I guess in the context of our practice, I think that's interesting in terms of the opportunities of projects in the private sector, and also the opportunities to explore further, or to, I mean, in a sense, it very much validates the types of designs that we look at in terms of enabling more differentiated practice through spaces that support this. And that's something I'm certain that the private schools will very much be looking at towards the future now.
Very interesting, this shift and what has happened, and those opportunities that has been created to this, again, to this inconvenience for your practice, so for your architecture for Hable. So very interesting. And if I ask a question for you, Peter, in China, for your practice, how do you think about those opportunities that has been created on your perspective?
Well, I think in China, the market is incredibly dynamic at the moment. And so there's both on the design side, the school side, the investor side, people are interested in what the shakeout's going to be from pandemic times. And so there's just a lot of new information coming into the market. I think overall, though, this has given a new sense of patience and acceptance of things that we can't change, and understanding how to navigate the waters. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking about these conditions, and I said, well, it's like someone's thrown a boulder in the water in a river, and the river's still flowing, and it's figuring out how to get around the boulder. So here in China, the demand for quality education, the demand for high quality facilities is still here, and I think people are navigating about how to proceed. But I think people are super interested in human connections, and human connections face to face, and human connections via technology. I mean, this session here, I mean, it would have been a major to do 3 years ago. We all would have been on a plane. And now, you know, we walk from our desk to the video room, and we're here meeting together. So it gives us a real human connection in ways that we didn't have it before.
Yes, and I think, Peter, you and I, we have been spoken much more often through technology than really in person. So let's say, like same with all of you on the panel discussion. So you're completely agree right. About this
so
human
in some
connection.
ways, it's increased the connection that we have with people, and we look forward to these kinds of meetings.
Yeah, and moving to Tezuka-san in Japan, Tokyo. We're getting your practice, and again, what you are living today with all those inconveniences. So, what opportunities has been created for your practice?
Okay, I lost many projects internationally, but in Japan, nothing changed, because if you don't work, there's no hospital. But on this topic, I can make use of my daughter. My daughter never liked to study, so always her score was a really problem. But about a year ago, she brought fantastic score, all A, because because of pandemic situation, they couldn't make score, so they made all students got A, and so my daughter got the fantastic opportunity. And then, but still she has to take test to go to a university. And then she went to after school called Toshin, and it's all ICT. And I found out in half year, and she got really good grade. And at the end, she finally went approved to go to one of the best school in Japan. In a half year, it happened. And I realized knowledge can be compensated by ICT. It was quite clear. But at the same time, and we need more opportunity for wisdom. Okay, I think you know that. And fortunately, I got the opportunity to design a school with a huge common space, with small laboratories around, like a town. And because of pandemic, government found out it's very good opportunity to test new kind of school. So, and in the future, maybe I can show you what kind of schoolroom changed. We used to have a classroom with some open space in the back. Okay, that's support for classrooms. But in school, there is no classroom. Common space with the small spaces, like a town. So these changes are happening. Okay, I think it's a good step. Of course, we have lost so many things, but the world has been changed. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So you think like we learn better now? You will use differently or better?
I think we can make this change to be better, okay? Because teacher doesn't need to spend a lot of time to make a scoring a test, okay? Computer can do that. And even our children on a remote island can take same opportunity as in the Tokyo city, you know? Yeah. And the teacher can spend more time with kids to get some kind of common sense, how to say that, such a kind of, okay.
So yeah, I mean, agree. I mean, some people from remote places can definitely have an access to all those information.
Yeah,
knowledge.
they can go to Harvard or Tokyo University, Yeah. Now it becomes possible. That is a big change.
And yes, I mean, big question about wisdom as well. I mean, how to work towards wisdom with all those inconveniences we have been through.
Yeah. To do that, we need a big common space. That is a kind of change you have to make a school plan.
Okay. Thank you, Tezuka-san. And if we go to the more like on the west part of the world with Michal regarding the inconvenience that has created opportunities for your practice. Do you figure out those opportunities, how they look like, and if they are really here in the UK?
Yeah, so I think just listening to the other panelists, that's really interesting, because you're right, Fiona. We have also had an enormous kind of swell towards independent schools, but this inconvenience of this pandemic has actually created an enormous, even more of a rift between that what I call the haves and the have-nots. And while the independent schools are kind of embracing this, and we are finding them already talking about having very agile spaces that, using technology even more with the best kind of microphones, cameras, speakers, because they are already planning for, longer term disruption or the next disruption, and how they deal with it if we've all got to kind of go back to staying at home. Whereas the state schools, I'm afraid, are really not in the same position. And it really makes me very afraid that we're leaving a whole lot of people behind. And what we need to make sure is that we deliver, really good, affordable, digital Wi-Fi, wireless, across actually all of our learning environments, and actually, in our office environments as well, because the only way we can now communicate really well is digitally like this. And when you're trying on a little Zoom link to show someone and draw, and you're finding that the mouse isn't kind of working properly, or you're not drawing it properly, it's really quite frustrating, I've got to say. So we also, the other things that kind of come into the office are the benefits of flexible working, and Fiona's spoken about this, but from an office point of view, it's kind of difficult to manage when people are not around constantly for you to make these decisions. But I think we're going to get really better at all of this, because we now know what the question is. Whereas 2 years ago, we didn't know what that question was. And we are now dealing with answering this question. That's not to say it's going to be the same as next time around. Some really kind of funny little things that we are finding. Tezuka-san spoke about his daughter and exams. Well, what has happened in the UK, I always say these young people must be the most examined people in the world. They take exam after exam after exam. And you often wonder when they're learning the wisdom, Tezuka-san, because all they're doing is finding out the knowledge to answer these exams. And what happens in the exam system is that you lose a whole lot of young people because they may not write exams very well, or traditional exams very well. So because of the pandemic, we're having to change the way we think about examining, because you're sitting at home, is it right that they don't know whether you've got access to all kinds of things. So they're having to spread that net much wider, and they're having to find different ways of finding out whether people have knowledge and wisdom. And how much they've got. So I think that's been really interesting. And the pandemic will certainly move the whole question around exams. It's moved it forward so quickly already. We've got to find new ways of understanding how much a young person knows and can translate what they know. Silly little things like desks. We've all of a sudden, we thought they were getting smaller and smaller at school, and we kind of wondered whether we need them. All of a sudden, they're getting bigger again, because everyone needs a computer, a textbook, and everything. And until we move away from having everything there, until people say we're comfortable enough just to have our laptop or just to have an iPad, I think we're in this transition kind of period.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, and Michelle, thank you. I mean, you mentioned like different topics in your response, but there is talking about equity, of course, in education. But at the end of your answer is like, at the end of the day, we need only a laptop to be able to go to a kind of working towards wisdom. And I have a question about, access to wisdom. Do you think, again, we talk about inconvenience today, inconvenience. Do you think when it's too convenient, everything is accessible, everything is convenient, do you think this can prevent from reaching wisdom, or from students being more innovative or more creative? So the too convenient, who would like to answer this too convenient? Prevent from reaching wisdom or from being more innovative?
And well, I'll start.
Yes.
And so one thing that I think a lot about when I'm thinking about school is the relationship between basically space and time. What kinds of spaces do you need in a school, and how often can you access that? And essentially that has to do with the way that time is organized during the day. And in some ways, historically, time has been organized to make things convenient. And so now the time is completely shifted, and we can integrate subjects in ways that we weren't before, and we can bring in experts. Before you would say, okay, in 3 weeks, we're going to have this expert come in, think of some questions you might want to ask him. And now it's like, okay, let's get him on a Zoom call tonight and ask them. And so it really shifts around the time. and your access to information and access to create together. And I think that's a really exciting thing about what we could see in new spaces is how time is used and the opportunities to use space. I love, Michelle, that you said about larger tables, because if there's larger tables, people are doing larger things. And if they're doing larger things, ideas are getting bigger. And to me, that's really exciting about what we all might do.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to, Ambrose? I'm interested in your comment there about time and convenience, and I wonder who the time. Schools are structured in periods. Let's be perfectly frank, and they change really frequently. So who is this convenient for? Because I'm not sure that it's convenient for the pupils. And at the end of the day, school is there for the pupils. So I think this question between time and convenience is really important.
Well, so I was just thinking, oh, sorry, can I hop in?
No, Fiona, just answer, please answer the question from Michelle.
Well, I'm just thinking that the whole structure of school is designed around efficiency, convenience, and conformity. And so it's almost like we need to get people comfortable with inconvenience and embrace it in order to allow people to move away from the status quo and to allow them to access a wider variety of types of learning in order to hit this creativity and innovation and all the things that we want young people to come out of school with in order to embrace this world of uncertainty.
Okay, may I talk now? May I?
Please, yes. Tezuka-san, yes.
I think biggest change we can make in this pandemic is age group. All children has to go to school same age, but actually children are different. Some children grow slowly, some children grow first. Okay, but it doesn't mean slow growing children cannot be bigger in the future. Okay, and because of the budget, school budget, we have to have a teacher, same time for same age group. But when we have ICT device, you can study mathematics whenever you want to. Possibly, you can use mathematics after 12 years old. It's possible. And you can be scientist. Okay, that kind of change can be happen. So age group, okay. I think age group was a kind of convenient way to teach children. Okay, now we can be more flexible about it. I think that is the biggest problem all the time. Children were supposed to be different. Some children were not ready. Some children were too much ready for that study. We are putting all them into a group. Okay, now we can be more flexible. So I would say, age group. That is what we can address in this opportunity.
Very good point, Tezuka-san, and you really talk about what seems to be very convenient with the age group. You're 12 years old, you share the same classroom as other 12 years old kids, but you really demonstrate like how the too convenient actually maybe prevent from a kids to develop himself during his student life. So, and being more flexible. That's great. I mean, thank you very much for answering all those questions as well, to really debate and asking questions to yourself. But we have like 250 people are attending our session today, and they have like some great questions coming from the chat, and I will read some of them. And please, panelists, raise your hand if you want to pick up this question to answer. So I'm going to read. I have a wonderful whiteboard in front of me. The team has really helped me to make sure that I can read every single word. So here's a question from Australia, from Richard Lena, who actually attended our desk notes last year, 1 year ago, from Hable. Would we have ever had sessions like this if it were not for COVID? Wow. So I repeat the question. Would we have ever had sessions like this one we are doing now if it were not for COVID? Who want to take this question?
I mean, the answer is no. That's a fairly easy one. Thanks, Richard. But we may have had a different session. You know, and it may have been, you know, we may have decided that this was worthwhile getting together and speaking about at another conference or something like that. I don't think, I mean, certainly the technology is allowing us to do this. You know, we really mustn't underestimate human contact as opposed to digital contact.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, thank you. Any other would like to take this question, or I can ask the next one related to this one. Hasn't it developed a whole new set of protocols and understandings? Again, this COVID, this session like this, hasn't it developed a whole new set of protocols and understanding? From the panel, someone want to jump?
Well, I'll have a go at that. I guess what I was thinking was, I think it needs to embrace that more. I mean, I think as much as we're talking about these really great opportunities, I think there is a propensity to default to what normal might be, or people's perceptions of normal, and therefore default to normal practices. And perhaps we need to, really take this opportunity or recognize this is a great opportunity, because in fact, this inconvenience is a global phenomenon. And in order to evolve from it, we do need to change our protocols and our processes and our practices and embrace them in order to get an evolution and change and to end up with a better or more equitable type of system out there. But we need to be quite conscious to make that happen, I think.
Mm. I mean, to highlight what you just said, there is some statement from a Hong Kong University lecturer and Don Gonda stated, like, COVID in a way has helped us rethink our practice. And you are talking, we need to change those protocols, but it seems like it's happening. It's obviously happening. There is another question from Sue Lim. Is a social aspect, there is a social aspect that is missing from kids and also adults. Online learning and socializing does not help us to deal with conflict. Online learning and socializing does not help us to deal with conflict. We will not be able to handle social challenges. How do they deal with that? Dealing with conflict, handling social challenges. Wow, big question. Who would like to take this question?
I'm happy to, because
yes.
Look, you're absolutely right. I mean, we mustn't take out the human bit that is so important. In fact, we have seen, I think, across the world, a groundswell of depression in young people. And you know, I can tell you from my own very personal experience, I think I said this last time, you know, my little young nephews who, after a couple of weeks of being at home and in the first lockdown, when I kind of was speaking to them electronically, and I said to them, "Is it brilliant?" And they, you know, not being at school. And they said, "No, it's really miserable. We miss our friends." But the thing that actually we also need to deal with all of this is actually, you say that digital electronics can't deal with conflict. Actually, in some ways, they make more conflict, because you can be so mean digitally where you would not be actually, and I'm talking about little kids, or actually even maybe else, where you would not be if you were sitting face to face and seeing the reaction of that person. So we need to learn to deal with these things somehow. And, you know, it's a balance. And there is some really bad things being done online digitally at the moment with social media and young people, as we know. So we've got to be careful.
And Peter, do you agree with or your comments on this about dealing with conflict while not being in physical place, face to face, or social challenges? What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think it's it changes the dynamic of conflict, because in technology, email, writing, you can be short and even terse, and so emotion doesn't come through with it. And so what's seen as efficient writing comes off as emotionally terse. And so yeah, I think that's a real issue. And I agree with Sue, is there's a lot that you learn just from being with somebody, standing next to somebody in the lunch line, of you know, going down the hall with somebody, of bumping into somebody, and how do you respond and react to that. So yeah, I think there is things with, you know, with this generation of kids that'll be interesting to watch as they go on.
Thank you, Peter. I'm talking about this young generation and the younger generations that are gonna come, of course, into schools, into university, or into the marketplace. There is a question from Yannick Leonard saying, like, I'm thinking of the younger generations. How will they create real human connections with others if most of the interactions nowadays are through technology? So quite related to the previous question, but again, to re-emphasize about this, now talking about the inconvenience of technology, where at the beginning we were talking about technology start to be very convenient. So again, maybe Tezuka-san, you would like to take this question?
You know, I've never been negative about these technologies. We call it nostalgic future. You know, in the 19th century and the 20th century, and always technology has been fear all the time, because technology takes job and the human life sometimes. It's a movie called Modern Times. And I think you know that, and the people were tackled in the machine. And then if you look at that movie called Tron, original Tron, people are sucked into the movie and they fight like a computer game. And then now these days, you know that in the movie called Matrix, things going on in this movie is in the computer is same as the outside world, real world, and the games as real as now. So I would say it's a kind of opportunity. Just technology exists everywhere between you and me and the TV. But at the same time, it doesn't disturb us to go to jungle in Borneo. People thinking COVID is dangerous. I designed a hospital for the children suffering cancer. And the people are really worried about the infection because they get the immune system disturbed. But doctor said interesting things, okay? Outside has bacteria, but you should know that in desert, you don't have a bacteria, So, external environment is not the one bringing infection, People are bringing infection, okay? So, just distance, and still you can stay in nature if you want to. No, there's a way to deal with it, okay? So I wouldn't, I wouldn't worry about new technology. We should make use of it, okay? And then just if you want to have a distance, go to nature, go to the forest. If you are 3 minutes away, you're okay. Now, it's much safer than wearing a mask. That is what I'm saying. Don't worry about anything. There's a way to deal with it.
That's, very interesting, Tezuka-san, what you just shared. And again, you really started strong with COVID. When you talk about this hospital, that COVID is dangerous, but you can as well find some opportunities to escape and really make this positive.
Can I add some?
Yes, please.
These days, people are trying to make a sterilized environment for the hospital. Sometimes it's very, very dangerous because we are full of bacteria.
Yes.
Okay, you can't stop that. But if you know how to deal with that natural environment, you can be safe. And these old days, we used to be able to find a comfortable place or maybe safe place. Okay, these days we are trying to create space convenient for us, but we can't find convenience. So we shouldn't wait for the opportunity. We try to go to look for, and the book called The Blue Bird. Answer is somewhere close to you. Just stretch your legs. You find it.
So it's at some point what Michal started with when during COVID, go to the nature, closer to the nature, enjoying the 4 seasons differently than before, and how to deal with the natural environment. That's a very interesting closing for our session today. We have 2 minutes together to try to, of course, summarize our great discussion with you, Fiona, Michal, Tezuka-san, Peter, and of course with the audience who ask some question. What I would like to highlight, we talk about very strong words like wisdom. We talk about flexibility, human connection. So it's really go very deep, this conversation about inconvenience. There is one thing I would like to highlight on a personal perspective is like frustration. We talk about inconvenience, but frustration can help us to create a better world. An example with my kids. So when I use a bottle of water, I buy it in a convenience store because it's super convenient. I buy it, I drink it. What do I do with that? And I start to see the inconvenience. I need to go to another place to make sure that I put this bottle in the right place, the right dustbin and everything. I feel it that's super inconvenient, even if the store is convenient. If I see my kids, first, they don't use a bottle of water anymore. They know exactly it's not inconvenient for them to recycle. This is part of their DNA. what they are learning from this pandemic, from the schools, and again, what they are learning from being flexible with others. And through the technology, actually, they are learning a lot because they have access to a lot of information. So it's exactly 5 p.m. here, 6 p.m. in Japan, 9 a.m. in England, and thank you, Australia, to be there with us till late, 8 p.m. start for you to have dinner. Thank you very much, everybody. And hopefully see you next year for the next desk notes. Bye-bye.